The reason I wanted to get to commercial was twofold. One, I wanted to scale, right, and
Mm-hmm.
just get bigger in general. But I also knew that having that commercial real estate experience would allow me to attract capital, to attract investors, and it allowed me to play the game at a higher level. If I was only buying 2 to 4 units, when
Mm-hmm.
you map out the amount of money it would take me to do it, like the deal structure limitations, like the amount of, loans I could get approved before I need to, do a different set of financing, it just didn't seem as feasible versus buying something larger.
Are you looking to achieve massive success in your life without dealing with costly investment nightmares? If yes, then this is the podcast for you. Here, we provide engineers and busy professionals all the secrets and strategies to create multiple streams of income, build generational wealth, and live a meaningful life by design. Here's your host, Ted Patel.
Welcome, Decoding Cash Flow listeners. Today we have a great guest, John Casmon. He's a real estate entrepreneur who has partnered with busy professionals and invested over 100 millions worth in apartment buildings. John also consults active multifamily investors to help them start and grow their business. He hosts Multifamily Insight podcast, and he is a co-creator of Midwest Real Estate Networking Summit. John, welcome to the show. It's great to have you on the show.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm excited to be here today and appreciate you sharing those kind words from my background.
All right. So, John, before we dive deep into a specific aspect of this business, right? I would like you to give a little bit background of yourself to our listeners. How did you get started,
Yeah.
and where you are at this point of time?
Yeah, I mean, the short story is, I used to work in marketing and advertising. I spent 15 years in corporate America doing marketing for big brands like Nike, Coors Light, Mountain
Mm-hmm.
Dew. And I was actually at General Motors, at the beginning of my career back in 2007. And if you remember 2007, 2008, well, that's when the company kind of went bankrupt. And unfortunately for me, I was there firsthand, right? So I was there, I was watching cable news and seeing my boss's boss on TV, right? And there was just a great deal of anxiety. And if you think about it, especially at that time, I mean, GM was one of the largest, American companies in the world, largest companies in the world, particularly one of the largest American companies, right? And for that company to face the financial issues it faced, it just was and it wasn't just GM, but some of the other companies too. It just really made me think about how secure and safe my job actually was. I had to face it every day, not knowing what was going to happen with bankruptcy. Is everybody going to get let go? Are they going to close the brands I was working on? And they did. I used to work on the Pontiac brand, and we
Mm-hmm.
shut down the Pontiac brand while I was working on it, and I got moved over to the Buick team, right? Um, and I would say two things happened for me. One, I really realized that I needed to have something independent of my W-2 job. So passive income, another source of income, that became very critical for me. But also that I needed to focus on my day job and thrive in that environment so I didn't worry about getting fired or let go. So I actually was part of the team that led Buick to be one of the fastest growing brands in America. I've been, featured in, the New York Times and Black Enterprise magazines, one of the top advertisers and marketers in the country. And then I moved back from the client side of the business to the agency side of the business, and I moved to Chicago. So I was in Detroit before, moved to Chicago, and that's when I really started to invest in real estate. So I knew real estate is what I wanted to do. I did not know how to do it in Detroit. So once I got to Chicago, I started with a 2-unit building, then I bought a 3-unit. My wife and I saved our money. We bought an 8-unit, so our first commercial real estate property. And from there, I realized what I was doing was working, but not at the scale that I was expecting it to work at. And I realized I need to start working with other people, right? So working with other people's money or
Yeah.
working with other investors. And that really launched kind of our syndication business.
All right. So the one point that you made, right, 2007, 8, when the market was like the job market was in red, like bleeding during that point, right, after the crash in 2008. And I frankly speaking, I also was caught up in the same cyclone. I used to work on Wall Street for investment banks, and you know what happened on Wall Street during that period. So I'm similar to you, right? I also started looking for some other avenues. I didn't want the boardroom to decide my fate. Like, okay, hire or fire him, or wanted to take control of my life, my situation, and that was my turning point also. And what I would suggest is, everyone, they need to take a look and see how secure is your job. Today you have it, tomorrow you don't. You never know when the market is going to turn. So you always have to have some kind of backup plan, whether it is a passive or active investment. You always need to have something that you can rely on, even for a short period of time after, you know, uh, after you don't have a job, or something, unexpected happens in your life.
Yeah, and I would just add to say, for me, what really made this so real was, one, I had a lot of time, right? I mean, it was almost a year from the time where the rumors started about our financial situation to it kind of got confirmed internally to, our CEO flying down to DC, right? And all of this stuff, right? It was almost a year before he actually went through bankruptcy. So every day, this anxiety kind of was there and asking questions that I had a lot of time to process. And one really critical moment for me was someone snuck me onto the 38th floor. So the 39th floor was the C-suite. The 38th floor was kind of where HR was. And every person in the entire global department, so it was VSSM, Vehicle Sales Service and Marketing, every person's name was on a big board that went all the way around a 360 room. And all of us were on a little, it wasn't even a full sticky, like Post-it note. It was like a half Post-it note. And it had everyone's name in the organization on that Post-it note. And it was color coded. And if you were red, you were getting cut, and so when you see yourself like minimized to a stick-it note, and someone is basically playing a game and organizing in an office, yep, this guy's good, keep him, nope, move that guy, get him out of here. And you really recognize how small of a role you play, because some of us, we get egos, right? You're a great employee, you're crushing it, you make six figures, you make whatever you make, right? You start to feel yourself, and that happened a lot. People thought they were big time. You got a certain job title, people respect you, they got to kiss your butt. And when you see the real role you play in the global landscape of a multi-billion, trillion, whatever it is, dollar company, and you're just this little small, 2-inch piece of paper, and that's what you represent to the company, that ego goes away, and you realize real quick, you better fend for yourself, because and even if you're good, especially at a large corporation, the politics come in. Well, what if you're not someone's, they just don't like you, right? They just need to move you out of the way so they can get their person there. You got to take lateral moves, right? They want to send you to the field and ship you out to the middle of Iowa. No offense to anybody in Iowa, but they want to ship you to the middle of Iowa so you could check some boxes before you come back to HQ. Just all of these things start to play out. And I was like, I don't see a path where at some point I don't get screwed. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I'm just saying that at some point, you got to be the fall guy, unless you rise up to be CEO, or you just decide I'm done with my ascent. So I think to take control over your financial future is key, just to create options. Even if you love your job, it's great to have options.
Yeah. And see, as you know, like even CEO gets replaced. So it's not about how important, as you said, how important you are. Things change, things just changes like in a second. Yeah. So you said you started investing in real estate after 2008, right? You started doing the single family, then couple of multifamilies, and you got started, saw how it helps you build a wealth, right? It not only gives you a tax advantage, but also gives you a monthly cash flow at the end of the mortgage period. The property is like paid and owned, So how did you move to multifamily from the small multifamily, 1 or 2 units? How did you transition to the apartment buildings? Can you share that story?
So I think the first thing is like I cannot underscore how important education is. And
Mhm.
if you are looking to scale your own real estate portfolio, everyone tells you to educate yourself, and that's a given, but it is so critical. And with that education comes confidence, right? The confidence in what you're doing, that it's working, that there's a proven track record, that there's a blueprint. And one thing that popped up every time I talked to anybody who was investing in real estate or reading books or anything like that is anyone who started in like single families, and then went to multifamily, they all say they wish they would have started multifamily sooner. So I would read that and I would hear that feedback. And I was like, all right, well, why don't we just skip that and just go straight to multifamily? Now, for me, multifamily is a 2 unit, right? So a small multifamily, 2 and 4 unit properties. But I wanted to get to commercial. And the reason I wanted to get to commercial was twofold. One, I wanted to scale, right? And
Mhm.
just get bigger in general. But I also knew that having that commercial real estate experience would allow me to attract capital, to attract investors, and it allowed me to play the game at a higher level. If I was only buying 2 to 4 units, when
Mhm.
you map out the amount of money it would take me to do it, like the deal structure limitations, like the amount of, loans I could get approved before I need to, do a different set of financing, it just didn't seem as feasible versus buying something larger. Now, granted, larger to me at that time meant a 12 unit or 20 unit, not 100 unit building. But that's ultimately what we ended up doing next was 192 units. And part of it was when you start to surround yourself with people playing the game like that, you start to make yourself aware of the possibilities. And I think the key is recognizing that you don't have to be everything.
Yeah.
You can collaborate, you can partner, you can be an LP, which is a great way to start. Invest passively in a deal,
Yeah.
put your money to work and then learn while you earn. And if this is
Yeah.
something you want to do more of, well, then you can take the steps necessary to maybe do your own deal or become a general partner on another deal. And I think that was really key for me is just recognizing what real estate investing was supposed to do for me and then letting kind of the feedback come naturally. So if real estate was supposed to give me kind of insulation from job loss, well, that was the first step. One thing that did happen to me on my journey though is I realized how many other people didn't have a plan. And it made me think back to my time at GM because I remember when we had a massive round of layoffs, there was a guy who sat, kind of kitty corner right in front of me, and he got let go after like 20 some years, 22 years or something like that. And he did not have a plan B. He was not investing on the side. He didn't have a rental portfolio to support him. And I remember thinking about people like that to say, man, all the time and energy I'm putting into learning how to invest in real estate, a lot of these people they're not as interested, which, very few people are really interested in real estate investing, right? You're interested in the money, you're interested in the perks, but, landlord tenant laws, yeah, very few people want
Yeah.
to sit down and read those things. So to be able to truly help these individuals is to create opportunities for them to partner with us. And once I started to realize that, oh, this is actually bigger than me just having my income, cover my passive income, cover my expenses, that's when that purpose got bigger and that started to fuel this notion to say, okay, well, maybe I should really create a company. Maybe I should work with other people. Maybe I should educate myself even beyond what I had planned on doing because now I'm going to make this a bigger responsibility. And I think that's key, for all of us to be able to have something that fuels us, that provides value for other people. And for me, it was just thinking about those individuals in my life, the experiences that they've had, and trying to be a trusted person who can help them reach their own financial goals along the way.
Yeah. And as you said, right, it's always about helping out others. If I know what I'm doing, I know how to, invest passively or actively and make some good returns out of it. Why don't spread the word? Let others also take the advantage, and we get mutually benefited, right? Right in the
Yeah.
aspect. So it's yeah, that's great. So based on the current market situation, right? What do you think about the multifamily? Where does it go from? Because right now, what I am seeing is in the multifamily, of course, it's like finding good deal is finding needle in a haystack. All right, that because the expectation of the buyers, versus no, sorry, I would say expectation of the sellers hasn't come down a lot. They're still asking, the asking price is still too high. The cap rate hasn't, the spread between the cap rate and the interest rate is still wide.
Yeah.
So to pencil out a good deal, it's a lot tougher than it used to be before. What do you see from your perspective? Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that will continue to shift and change a little bit over the next year here, but I think it does speak to the resiliency of multifamily, and I think there's a couple ways of looking at it. Ultimately, what you're getting at is many of these sellers are not truly motivated. They don't have to sell, right? They're curious, they want to see what they can get, but if they're not, they're not willing to bring that price down, they must have other options, so they're not motivated. And to me, one of the things that's really important is recognizing that motivation from an owner. Why would they sell? What are they looking to accomplish? What problem are we looking to solve? And the more you focus on solving problems, the easier it's going to be for you to create deals. I like to tell people that, I don't think you find a great deal in this market. I think you got to create it. You've got to solve a problem. You've got to put together a structure. You've got to think about it in a unique way that also is conservative and allows you to protect your downside. So there's definitely moving pieces to it. But you're right. I think the market's going to shift. I think some people will have to sell and they will be motivated. And whether that's because their loans come in due, or it's a partnership that's dissolving, or, the interest rates are, they keep going up and they can no longer, pay the higher interest rate that they're paying each month. You're going to see more of that where people actually do have to sell, and I think that's going to create opportunities for buyers. But I think patience is key, but also staying creative, and I like to call it being patiently aggressive, right? Patient with the results but aggressive with our actions.
As you said, right, think outside the box. Maybe you can structure the deal some other way where it makes more sense. And always, I would say, regardless of the situation, be conservative in your underwriting. Don't try to mark up the numbers so that you can get the deal. No, never do that. Yeah. All right. So you have been working with a lot of investors, right? And partnering with them to fund the multifamily syndication. What is the best way you use to attract more investors?
Yeah, it's a good question, right? How do we attract more investors? So first of all, I would say I think there's three things that have to be true for people to want to invest with you, right? So from my standpoint, this is something that, when I'm working with clients, I tell them as well. First of all, it's going to come down to your confidence, and confidence, it can't be fake. I'm not talking about fake it till you make it, or just blind hubris where you just believe in yourself. Like, no, I'm talking about put in the work, right? You were asking me before about how I made that transition from small multifamily to large multifamily. Well, I attended a bunch of events. I went to a networking event at least once a month, if not 2 or 3 times a month. I read a ton of books. I spent a lot of time at the library. When podcasts started coming out, I listened to a bunch of podcasts, right? So I used to read a ton of blog posts, so I read what I could. I became a member of Bigger Pockets. I did all those kind of things. So educate yourself so that you actually know your stuff. The confidence has to be rooted in the preparation. So make sure that you are prepared. So that first C is confidence. The second C is going to be credibility. You need to be able to look at something that you've done where you've won, where you can considerably say, okay, I can do this. For me, it was my time in corporate America, talking about, the work we did on the Buick brand, coming out of bankruptcy and being able to make that one of the fastest growing brands in America was a big accomplishment. Me being able to look at what I did for other brands, whether it be, Nike, Coors Light, Mountain Dew on the agency side and the campaigns I led for them. Other aspects of business or foundations, working on nonprofits. But what have you done in your career, or professionally where you can point to it? Go back to real estate, the 2 unit I bought, the 3 unit I bought, the 8 unit I bought. We made money. We drove profits. We put together a good business plan, all those things, right? So that credibility was there. And not just my own credibility, but who was able to bring on board, my mentors, my partners, my property management companies. So that credibility was allowing me to kind of grow and scale. And then the last C is going to be your connections, right? You got to have investors. Who are you talking to? Who do you know in your network, in your database? How can you expand that network in that database? Those are the three things that are really important, right? So confidence, credibility, and connections. So for me to attract capital, it's making sure that we hit on all three. And the biggest thing for me now that you have the confidence, now you have the credibility, it's always growing our connections. And this is one of the ways, right? Coming on podcasts like this, talking to other, investors, understanding what you're doing and just trying to build relationships with people. And I think being yourself, being authentic, if you've got the knowledge, share it. But again, I'm a big fan of be who you are. I'm not talking about coming out there and trying to misrepresent your skills or your experience. Your experience is your experience. If you don't have a lot of experience right now, everybody at some point didn't have a lot of experience. So the key here is to lean on others, mentors, advisors, partners. Who else can you work with that does have more experience? And not just to check the box, but to actually learn from them and then rely on them and to say, hey, I'm looking at this. How would you approach it? What would you do here? It's to actually leverage the knowledge and the insights of these individuals. So that's the way you attract capital is you, one, focus on yourself, build up your confidence in your own knowledge, surround yourself with experts and rely on the knowledge you do have, and then continue to expand your network.
Yep, love it, man. The main point I would like to highlight is expand your network, leverage someone else's experience. The same way, I also did when I got started into real estate, right? I didn't knew nothing about real estate, and there was a friend of a friend who was in the construction business. So I started with him. I worked for him for 6 months for free. Just followed him. Just tried to learn out of him. All right, and this after that, I got started into construction, single family, so luxury homes, multifamily properties, and we are in syndication. And the syndication also, so right, as you mentioned, like it's you can master one aspect of the multifamily business, right? You don't have to be master of everything. You can handle the investor relationship or acquisition part of it or property management part of it. So there are so many roles to play, and if you can focus on one role, get good at it, and that's what you need to get started. And of course, and other thing is, if you want to learn, just start investing as a limited partner, LP. You will get so much knowledge, experience on what people do in this business by just investing it as an LP. And sooner or later, you can always get into active side of the business once you have gained that network, knowledge, connections, everything.
Yeah, I love that. And Ted, the one thing I'll say is, as I look back, the one thing I wish I would have done differently is I wish I would have started as a limited partner on these larger deals. And the only reason I say that is I was trying to do a lot. I had my full-time job, I had my first child, my second child was born right around the time I was growing my syndication business. And then I started flipping houses to generate more capital with the money I did have. And it was just too much. And the flipping, I was just not very good at. And I wish I would have taken those funds and invested passively in a deal because it would have gotten me on that road faster. Think about it like this. Would you rather invest with the guy who has not done commercial multifamily, but just flipped some houses and is now doing his first deal, or a guy who has invested passively in deals, is now looking to bring you on to future opportunities like that, if they come across another one, right? One, that person may not have led the deal, but they at least know exactly what it is they're asking you to do or inviting you to do because they've done it, Yeah. It's like, hey, here's what I just did. If you want to know more about this, I can bring you in the next time I'm looking at an opportunity. So that would have been better for me and I just didn't have the time. I mean, I was running around crazy on these flip projects and cutting out of work early and, trying to make sure the contractors are on site. And it's a different animal when you're talking about a flip versus the professionalism of being able to manage larger multifamily properties where you have on-site property management and you can run it like a business, which was my background. I didn't have that blue collar construction background where I'm on the job site every day. My background was, if we have a meeting and you tell me something's going to be done on Tuesday, you damn well better get it done on Tuesday. And if not, you better call me in advance to say, hey, we're going to need an extension because of XYZ. If I show up on Tuesday and it's not done, we got problems. And I can't tell you how many times I would show up on Tuesday and it wasn't done. And then it's not till I call and say, oh, yeah, about it. Oh, yeah, well, that part got delayed. It's like, and you never thought to call me and tell me? Like, so I just realized that mindset was not the kind of mindset I was used to managing versus, again, on the larger stuff. Now you got folks who are on salary. They're on your payroll. So it's a little easier for you to manage that and make sure that your expectations are really clear.
Yeah. So during your this real estate journey, right? What was the toughest thing that you experienced in the real estate market?
Fraud, just flat out fraud. Have had contractors rip me off. I've had partnerships that have just, not ended well. And I think it's easy for someone to maybe go through those things and just decide, okay, well, that didn't work, or I don't want to do that again. I know they work. I've seen it work for other people, right? And I think the key here is to step back and say, well, what could I have done differently? It's not to say it's all my fault, but on the same note, I have to control what I can control. And as investors, that's the key. How do you pick better partners? How do you hire better contractors? How do you ask better questions? How do you vet the people you're going to be partnering with? And that's what I've learned. And so those things that have happened, they all make you better, right? But it's not being a victim or anything like that. Like, look, it happened. It happens to people all the time. You've got to have the mindset that you can pick yourself up, ask better questions, align yourself with the right people who have a shared mindset, and go forward. But I was talking to somebody last night about the same kind of thing. And for me, I think it's just really important to align yourself with the right people. Every deal may not go perfect, but I want to make sure that I'm going to war. I'm investing with people who have my best interest in mind, who I know are going to fight for me and my investors in the same way I'm going to fight for them and their investors, as opposed to somebody just looking to make a buck. So I just try to really understand the personality, their values. Is this some family oriented person? Is this a spiritual person? Is this someone who, like, again, who are you at the core? When no one's looking, what do you value? And I will tell you, the times I've made errors on people have always been when I didn't pay attention to the person and who they were, and I focused on just the opportunity. So I try to just focus on the people. Who are you? What are your values? What experience do you have? Do you have everyone has blind spots, right? We can fix that. We can fix, to your point, you don't have to be an expert at everything. So we can fix those things, but I mean, you can't fix someone who has the intentions of deliberately misleading people, or simply doesn't have the ability to do something and is not humble enough to recognize that they need help, right? If someone's just going to run and try to do it themselves the wrong way and you can't talk to them, there's nothing you can do there. So
there's a saying, right? You cannot wake up the person who is faking to be asleep. So that right.
There you go.
Yeah. Of course, you come across those kind of people's anytime. The best thing is how you screen them. And the next question leads to the same thing, right? How do you screen a good multifamily syndicator, right, with whom you want to invest? So what are your takes on that?
I think it's a great question, right? Screening operators is really key because these are really longer term relationships. I mean, typically on a multifamily deal, you're looking at a 3 to 5 year hold, probably longer now, so maybe more 5 to 7 year hold. So this is not a short relationship, and you're talking about investing 50K, 100K or more into these deals typically. So one of the first things I want to do is I want to get to know who they are as an individual. I want to talk to them. I want to learn more about them, their background, what successes they've had, what challenges they've had. I also want to understand their experiences, right? What's their track record? What deals have they done? How did those deals pan out? I'd like to talk to some of their other investors, get some referrals and what was it like? And we're not necessarily just looking for glowing reports. I'm just trying to get a sense of, what was the communication like? Did they do what they said they were going to do? What should I expect if I were to work with them? And then one question I think every passive investor should always ask is they should ask about a deal that didn't pan out. tell me about a deal that didn't pan out as
Yeah.
expected. It doesn't necessarily have to be a loss, but just a deal that didn't go as planned. And what I'm listening for, I want to hear if this person takes ownership of things they could have controlled, or do they just blame circumstances and the people around them?
Yeah.
Right? We talked about fraud, right? And I very easily could have said, "Oh, this contractor stole $20,000 from me. I can't believe he would do that." And it did happen, right? But I hired
Yeah.
him, right? So I gave him the 20K. So for me, as an investor, the reason I'm asking that question is I want to know, does this person learn from their mistakes? Have they changed their processes and systems to alleviate some of these challenges from happening again? Or is this someone where if something happens in the future, are they going to point fingers and say, "Hey, sorry, I lost your money. Jimmy, the contractor, he took it and there's nothing I can do." Right. So I want to understand, is this person learning from their mistakes? Are they putting in systems and processes in place? Are they learning from other experienced operators and continue to, advance and change their systems and processes so that they can protect my capital? And are they a leader? Are they a person who's going to take accountability for their role in leading this investment? Because that's ultimately what I'm looking for. You want someone who's going to be able to navigate whatever happens next. We don't know what's going to happen next, right? We know what happened yesterday. We don't know what happens next. So we're trying to find the right people to lead that initiative, no matter what's going to happen. Someone who can be fluid, someone who can think on their feet, someone who understands how to take care of their investors. So those are the kind of questions that I'm asking and really what I'm looking for when I'm vetting an operator.
Yeah. And you rightly said, right? Not every deal is a great deal. There is always something sometimes when the things go south, and the good operator would always know how to mitigate those risks. They know what the next action items would be, and try to resolve it before it's too late. And even though sometimes they might not meet the expectation, but at least they would be somewhere in the midpoint so that they can keep their investors happy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And I think too, it's a matter of recognizing the value that operator has, even as you're determining risk, right? Because as an LP, you're never going to know every single question to ask about a deal or a market or all that. So really, if you can find the right person, they should be able to answer the other questions you have, right? Hey, why this market versus that market? Or why do you like this market? Or why are you doing this? The right operator is going to be able to answer those questions because they've already thought about those issues, right? They've already thought about it. It's already part of the game plan. They already have if this and that. They already have their whole logic, their business plan laid out. So that's why it's so important to find good operators, because they're going to do 95% of the thinking in the Q&A. And they're gonna question themselves way more than you ever could as an LP, and that's what you want. You don't want to find someone and you ask them a question about, like, what do you like about this market, and they say something and say, well, what happens if that happens? And they're like, oh, I don't know, I didn't think about that. Like,
I'll
that's
get back to you
concerning me,
later.
right? Yeah. It's like, yeah. Oh, you think that company might leave? Oh, okay. Oh, okay. I didn't think about that. So you want to make sure certainly you work with folks who are proactive in their approach and thinking through kind of different scenarios moving forward.
That's great. So what is the best business advice that you will give to our listeners? I would say maybe business or personal mindset advice, whatever you want to share.
I think just take ownership of everything in your life, your investments, your family, your health. Again, I think we live in a society where for whatever reason, people want to be a victim. And it's not to say that bad things will happen to good people, but control what you can control, and if you're in a situation where your job is not as secure, try to figure out how to take control over that, whether that's passive investments, whether that's, changing your education and maybe get another degree or whatever the case may be, but take control over your life, your health, your family, be that person. There's a great book called The Four Agreements. And it's a really good book to just help you with this mindset, right? Of not jumping to conclusions or thinking negative things about what other people say or think of you. But again, try to take control over what you can control, and you'll be more impressed with the outcome of your life.
Sounds great, man. So John, let's get started with the final round of questions.
Let's do
Is
it.
there anything you want to tell to our listeners before we jump to those questions?
The only thing I'll say is, if you want to learn more about, multifamily investing or, some of the deals we do have a sample deal package on our website. And you can check that out at casmoncapital.com/sample deal. Other than that, let's jump into it, man.
All right. Okay. So what are your main source of information to drive your growth? Yep.
Personal growth or like when I'm looking at a deal?
Business, personal, everything. What are your
Okay.
main source of informations that you rely on?
Yeah.
It might be online
Yeah.
certain websites, um, news articles.
This is a great question. So I would say I have a lot of conversations with investors, right? So I'm a podcast host as well. And as a podcast host, I get to talk to folks just like this most days of the week and getting real-time feedback, sentiment. One of the questions I like to ask is, give me a digital mobile resource that you recommend for your business, right? So if someone says something, I'm like, oh, let me jot that down. It seems really, really interesting, right? So those one-on-one conversations I think are key. When I'm analyzing deals, going through those offering memorandums, like to see what the brokers are suggesting and things like that are important. From a data, if I'm looking at population growth or job growth or anything like that, there's certainly resources I rely on. DataUSA.io is one of my favorite places to go, just because it gives me a market snapshot at a high level with a lot of those key details that otherwise I'd have to scour through census.gov or BLS, which is the Bureau of Labor Statistics. So I can get all that data in one place. Justicemap.org is another place I'm really trying to go to the street level of a market to figure out the income tract and all that. So I like that website a lot. And then for personal stuff, besides checking in with friends and family, I do journal, so I've got my journal here. I try to write down my affirmations. And sometimes I'll kind of go back and just see what was I thinking at a certain time or try to remember, again, I talked about, the flips projects and contractors taking money from me, right? So sometimes you got to write that stuff down so you remember, don't make that mistake again, right? We're not giving 50% up front. We're gonna do it this way so that we kind of protect ourselves going forward. So just trying to stay true to the information that's in front of us.
All right. And what is the book that you will recommend that had made the most impact in your life or your own business?
Oh man, in life, those are big ones. So Rich Dad Poor Dad's the easy one, just because it started the journey. But I would say there's two more that I think are really powerful. One is called The Power of Focus, by Jack Canfield and a host of other authors. It was probably the first book in that space that I read that really helped me understand how important mindset was. I mean, the irony is I actually never finished reading the book because I would read it and I would read 3 pages and get so fired up. I just have to stop reading to write down all the thoughts going through my mind. So it's very, very influential book for me. And then Atomic Habits is the last one I would give you. I just thought it was very practical and direct. The Power of Focus kind of helped me with an inspiration. Atomic Habits helped me with a tactical execution of those ideas.
Yeah. Improve 1% every day. That's what comes out from it. That's it. Yeah. Yeah. And the other thing is, how would you like to give back to the world?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, we try to help other folks, take more control of their financial freedom through our investment opportunities as well as our education platforms. But outside of that, I am on the advisory board for an organization called Search for Water, and we invest in sustainable water solutions in communities in need, particularly in Haiti, the Dominican Republic, the Philippines, and Uganda. And the thing that's amazing for me is the woman who founded it used to work with my wife, and she quit her corporate job to do this full time, and all the money goes into the field directly. And we take for granted the power of the access of water, right? You turn on a faucet, water comes out, you drink it. maybe it's not filtered enough, whatever it is, but like we have water, we have running water available to us. And in a lot of these communities, people have to walk, 5 kilometers, right,
Yeah.
to get a well, to fill that well, then walk back to their community. And in a lot of these areas, young girls, they don't go to school after like 12 years old because their job for the family is to go fetch water every day.
Yeah.
And it's
So,
just incredible when you think about just society and how some of these different societies operate. So that organization is what I'm very passionate about, because there is a commitment to providing water equality, which is a human basic right. But a lot of folks don't have it. And, again, I think we take it for granted as Americans, but this is a real issue in major parts of the country or major parts of the world.
that's a great thing that you're doing, because as you said, right, when you're in America, we don't realize how important the water is, right? You get it without any difficulties. You get the clean water without any difficulties. So, and in many part of the world, as you mentioned, it's very hard to get water. And even if you get it, it's not the pure water that we get over here. It's dirty or, polluted. Yeah, that's really good. All right. So the final question. How can Decoding Cash Flow listeners get in touch with you?
Yeah, so I mentioned the sample deal package. I'll say that we also host a podcast called Multifamily Insights. So if you enjoyed this conversation, you can check me out there. We bring on great guests who share everything from how to scale a portfolio passively to how to track capital on the active side, and ultimately how to leverage real estate to help you reach your financial goals. So it's available anywhere you listen to podcasts. We're 550 episodes in, I believe, at this point. So it's a great show to help you reach your financial goals.
Right. All right. John, thanks a lot for being on the show. Thanks for taking out some time. It was a great show. So many golden nuggets for our listeners, and hope to catch you soon.
Absolutely. Hey, thank you again for having me. And again, I look forward to staying in touch with you and hopefully hearing from some of your listeners today.
All right. Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Decoding Cash Flow, brought to you by Aster Capital. If you found value in this episode, then please share it with someone who you think could benefit from it. And make sure to act on what you've learned. If you want Ted Patel to personally help you reach your goals, then feel free to set up a one-on-one call with him. Also, visit us at astercapital.com for more free resources. Content of this podcast is for informational purposes only. As always, please consult your own advisor before making any investment decisions or setting a course of action. Thanks again for joining us on this episode of Decoding Cash Flow, and we'll catch you in the next episode.